I know we saw Parker Griffith. He had
Mm-hmm.
changed parties, and then he didn't make it. What kind of scenario was that? Was that just bad luck, or
No.
that was one that he did change parties, and some of them got mad that they had given him money and that kind of thing?
It was a mixture. You know, Parker Griffith was a state senator in Alabama. He lined up with Democrats consistently. He voted for them against Republicans. Then he ran for Congress. He voted for Nancy Pelosi for Speaker of the House.
Mm-hmm.
He began, after he got up there, he was only there 2 years, but he began as it got closer to election time. I think he got a little bit more conservative as he went, and I think that whether that was genuine or not, a lot of Republicans up in the 5th Congressional District thought he was playing that for whatever it was worth, and they wanted to go with a true Republican, so they elected Mo Brooks for the congressman up there.
A lot of people have talked about the Tea Party and the influence it has had. How do you view the Tea Party and its movement? Is it definitely aligned with Republican Party, or do you look at them like independents that they could swing to whoever is going to fulfill what they want done?
I think part of them are independent, part are Republican, but I don't think part of them would swing to the other way. I think they are conservative folks. They're either going to vote Republican or they're going to vote independent or start their own party. I, for one, think the Tea Partiers, for the most part, are a very strong conservative group of people. The Republican Party ought to court. We have to bring them into the fold. We don't want them to go out and start a new party. I don't think they will, but if we alienate them and show that we don't respect them and they don't have any participation in our party, then they could go out and start their own party, and that's not healthy for our state and for our nation. I think the two-party system is here to stay, and I think anytime you have a third party, a candidate, you're not really going to accomplish that much other than maybe some unintended consequences. You know, when Ross Perot ran for president, you had Bill Clinton, Ross Perot, and George Herbert Walker Bush, and it was identified that Ross Perot's vote basically delivered the presidency to Bill Clinton. While that wasn't Ross Perot's intent, that's what happened, and had Ross Perot not been in that presidential election, George H.W. Bush would have been reelected most likely.
I know you had said that there is a difference between Republicans and Democrats in Alabama. What are some of the key issues that you believe are going to make a difference, and where y'all stand compared to where the Democrats stand?
Well, one of the things that we worked for so hard in the past and are working for now, and that's voter identification. That's very important because you have to show your photo ID to do most anything. You can't board a plane without it. So many things require that, yet for some reason the Democrats in the legislature have held back on that and said, no, we don't want to. That would intimidate some folks by having to show the voter identification. I don't think that's the case, and I think we'll see that change during this legislative session. I believe they will pass a voter identification. So that would be one bill that I think would be in stark contrast to what they have done in the past and what we would do in the future.
I think I saw that bill has already been pre-filed.
Mm-hmm. It has.
I believe Senator Allen, I know, has, I guess, a version, and he talked about it. And I know one of the things that I know Democrats have talked about is, given Alabama's history of voter intimidation, or that there might be the concern there, and he talked about that identification, it would be free. You would not charge some. If you had somebody like a 90-year-old grandmother who didn't drive, they wouldn't have to pay for a driver's license. They could go up and get their identification at no cost to them.
Well, you know, we had a lot of battles when I was in the Senate over just any kind of identification, really. And you could use a food stamp card, you could use a library card or whatever, and that's what they use now today for identification. But, you know, it's so easy to be fraudulent in identifying yourself using those mechanisms. So a government identification such as a photo ID is going to be ideal. No one wants to eliminate anybody from the process. It's all about honest elections. That's what Republicans have worked so hard for over the last several years. Made a lot of progress, and I think we'll make progress on that again this year.
I know one of the main issues that we've talked about, and you talked about the presidential election, is health care. And I even saw when Governor Bentley was giving his speech, we even had some Democrats stand up and say, you know, clap when he was talking about recalling the health care bill. Do you think that that's going to be a major issue coming up, and what do you think about the health care issue? Well,
I think most people were very disappointed that Congress passed that. It's an intrusion on the privacy of the individual. The state should be able to have more say in what's going on. If the state wants to have a health care program, they can enact that. But to require an individual to buy health insurance or be penalized is un-American, in my opinion. And so there may be some good parts of the health care bill, but certainly much of those mandates that are in there are un-American, and I don't think that most Alabamans or most Americans really appreciate those mandates.
When it comes to health care, a lot of people are concerned about those who don't have health insurance and the burden it's placing when you have uncompensated care. Are there any plans that the Republican Party or Republicans are putting forth to try to cover that when you have someone who doesn't have health insurance, and so a hospital doesn't go broke because they're having all this uncompensated care?
Absolutely. Now, most of the health care issues are debated in Congress. I know that the Republicans in Congress have a plan for that. I can't speak to the specifics of that, but certainly we don't want anyone to go without health care. And we have the best health care in the world. People come from other countries here for their surgeries and for different health care measures. So I think we've got to continue to have the level of quality of health care that we have in Alabama, make it affordable for everybody. And so that'll be an issue, I'm sure, with Dr. Bentley being a physician himself. He will be offering a different perspective than we could ever imagine from any other governor. So it's ironic, I guess, that at this time in our history, we elect the doctor as our governor when health care is the #1 issue in America today.
I know you were in the Senate for a long time, so you know how it works. And in the past, it's taken a long time to get bills out, and usually wait till the last minute to get the budgets out.
Right.
This time, they're saying they're going to be getting bills out and going to do the budget early. Why do you think the Republicans are doing that, and do you think it's a good thing? Do you think they might pass something too quickly?
No, not really, because I think most of the bills they're talking about passing have been vetted. We know most of the things because they were in the handshake with Alabama. And getting the budgets passed early was part of that process. I met with Speaker Hubbard. Speaker Hubbard this morning, and we talked about getting that budget out and getting it out sooner rather than later, and I think that's going to happen. We really want
Will it happen, you think, right after spring break, or?
I think it'll start moving soon after spring break. I don't know that, again, it would pass that quickly, but it needs to be well thought out. One of the things that we didn't get to do when I was in the Senate, and that is review the budget before it was passed. Oftentimes, the budget would be presented that came out of the committee, and as soon as it's presented, another Democrat came along and substituted, and then they wanted to vote on it. And like, wait a minute, let's read this bill first. And it was really many, many times I saw that budget come through so fast, I voted no on most of those budgets because they would substitute them, and then within an hour we're voting on them, and you know how detailed they are. Many, many line items there. So I don't think the Republicans are going to do what was done in the past by the Democrats. We know why we were elected, because we have a different agenda, because we want to do things differently than what had been done in the past. So I don't think you're going to see some of that going on under the Republican administration.
Of course, when you were in the Senate, you were in the minority. What are some things that, now that Republicans are in the majority, that you hope they will implement that would, you know, as a minority, oh, I just really didn't like this, and you want to make sure that they don't make that same kind of mistake, because it could, in the long run, hurt Republicans being in the majority?
Well, of course, one of those things is what we just talked about. That is giving the body long enough time to study the budget before you vote on it. They should have a very minimum of 24 hours, but that's still really not enough time to review the budget. But the one thing, I guess, that really stuck in my craw more than anything else is we never knew what bill was coming up to be voted on until we were actually on the floor of the Senate. Now, the House, they actually got the special order calendar in advance, maybe 24 hours in advance. So they knew what was coming up. And we tried to get that done in the Senate, but unfortunately, we could not pressure them to do that. At most, we would get it at the beginning of the session of that day. And then 15 minutes later, you're on the special order calendar. So you don't know what's coming up. You're scrambling to get the bills that you're going to be debating. You're reading them as fast as you can so you can get involved in the debate. So that would be my pet peeve, I guess, from coming from the minority side. And I know that the Democrats would like to be able to see the special order calendar in advance. And I would urge the Republican leadership in both the House and the Senate to produce that. That's what we complained about, and I think they will fix that.
I know something that's been in the news is the pay raise. We even lost some Republicans from the House because they had voted for the pay raise. So I know it's kind of an issue. And they're saying they're probably not going to vote it down. How do you feel about that? Do you think it might hurt the Republicans if they don't vote it down in this session?
Well, first of all, it was not part of the handshake with Alabama. That was not in their program to do that. So, but having said that, I think that most Alabamans are concerned that any group would get a 60-something% pay raise, but it wasn't over the last year or 5 years or 10. It had been a long, long time since the legislators had a pay raise, but it's really perceived to be very, very negative. I think they need to do something. Now, there's been some talk about whether you prorate that the way the governor is prorating the budget, or is there some other measure? I think there has to be some adjustment made, in my opinion. I don't know if it's rolling it all the way back or doing something that's a compromise, because, to be honest with you, they had not received any kind of additional compensation for many, many years. I don't think this is an occupation to be a legislator. It is a citizen legislator, and it should not be your sole income unless you're retired and that's all you want to do. But you should not depend on the legislative pay to be your income. You know, our country was not founded on the basis of a legislator being full-time, whether in the state or the nation. So based on that, I'd say the bottom line for me is there needs to be some kind of adjustment, and I'll leave it up to the House and Senate leaders to determine what that is.
That's going to do it for Capitol Journal. I'm John Bean.
And I'm Lori Cummings. We'll see you tomorrow night at 5:30.